Good afternoon or evening. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Susan Evans, and I am honored to welcome you to today's webinar, Unacknowledged Grief. I have a connection and a deep respect with the Kensington caregiver experts, Lisa, Tami, Monica, and Melissa. My father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease 12 years ago. Overnight, I went from being a daughter to a caregiver for my father, concerned about the progression of his disease, and my dear mother, who had lost her partner in life. In 2015, we made the very difficult decision to move my father to a senior community. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and the guilt was overwhelming. Caring for my father at home was becoming too much for my mother, and I did not want to lose both my parents to Alzheimer's disease. Our family chose Kensington Senior Living because of their expertise and commitment to dedicated memory care. It was the hardest yet best decision we made. The team at Kensington took exceptional care of my father. I am one of the 30 million caregivers in the country, and I applaud the work that our caregiver experts are doing to support caregivers everywhere. Thank you, Kensington, for supporting and sponsoring their efforts through educational webinars. It is a lonely disease riddled with guilt for the caregivers. A copy of today's webinar will be delivered to your inbox with links to connect to these wonderful ladies. Please share the webinar with friends and family. We will also be utilizing the live Q&A function in the Zoom at the bottom of your screen. So please submit questions through the Q&A function, and we will also have questions that were submitted at registration. Please join me now in welcoming Lisa, Tami, Monica, and Melissa. Please welcome, ladies. Please join me. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome. And these are our Kensington caregiver experts. We're going to go ahead and kick it off with an introduction from each and some advice from each, and then we're going to go right into the questions that all of you wonderful attendees submitted at registration. And also, as I mentioned before, please utilize the live Q&A function in the Zoom bar at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with Lisa. Lisa, can you please share with the audience a few words about yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. And it's a pleasure and an honor and a delight to be here with all of you. My name is Lisa Bricker. My company is Gently Guided. I'm an Alzheimer's and dementia placement specialist and a family caregiver advocate because my husband, Gary, was diagnosed at age 63, but started showing signs at age 55. And our journey was 15 years long. And I have continued to really extend part of myself and my purpose to work with family caregivers so that they know that you're not alone on this journey. And because today we are talking about unacknowledged grief, I wrote something that I'd love to share with you to begin our conversation. And I look forward to the time we spend together. Over time, grief becomes an underlying mood to this disease, and it affects the entire family system. It is a loss without closure, also referred to as ambiguous loss. Grief is to be honored and respected. You cannot run from it because it will not let you. On this journey, we are not only grieving our loved one, we are grieving our own lives. Dementia changes the course of what we thought our lives would look like because was not on the travel brochure. This is a life-changing journey and we're never the same again. There is great wisdom and opportunity to be gained, but it is hard to find at times. And if we can begin to see this as a journey of healing, there will be gems. There will be sweet and tender moments with our loved ones that will become memories to treasure. This is a journey of courage and bravery. We will gain resilience and strength that we never knew we ever had. So we are here to empower you today, to inspire you, and to help create education and awareness. Thank you.
Wow. You're lucky I'm not sobbing right now. But the one thing I
Oh, she's...
Uh-oh, we lost her.
Do you all have the order for introductions? Oh, here she comes. Next.
I guess I went away for a little bit there.
Hi, welcome back.
I was able to gain my composure again, so I guess that's a good thing. But Lisa, I just loved every word of that, and please send a copy of that to us because we'll include that in the follow-up email. But once you never know, you can't prepare, and it's not like you put it in your goals and what you're going to do in the next 5 years is suddenly pivot your life and become a caregiver. But the one thing, it definitely makes in my relationship with all of you is I think we're more empathetic to just really understanding the journey. So thank you for sharing that. Tami.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tami Anastasia. I am a dementia consultant, educator, and the author of Essential Strategies for the Dementia Caregiver, Learning to Pace Yourself, PACE. I have a private practice and I provide counseling, emotional support, dementia guidance, and care strategies to family and professional caregivers. I also facilitate twice monthly caregiver support groups, and I also do a lot of educational webinars, professional in-service trainings, as well as in-person presentations. So it's a pleasure to be a part of the panel today, and I really appreciate the invite. And I am going to start with a quote that a client actually sent to me when she was taking care of her husband. And the quote is, "Grief is the price you pay for love." And I think that summarizes it a lot. The dementia journey is unpredictable, it's complex, and so is grief. And a lot of times in my private practice and my support groups, there are such a wealth of different emotions, and you have a relationship with this person pre-dementia. Now we have a different relationship as dementia progresses, and there's so many losses along the way, but a lot of times caregivers may not even know that they're grieving. They just know they feel sad. They know that they're losing certain things, and that's part of the grieving process. So one of my hopes today is that we can, one, normalize what you're going through is to be expected, and it is normal, and also help give you permission to experience the feelings that come up for you as you travel this journey, because it is very much a complex and an unpredictable journey, and yet there can be so much opportunity to make it a meaningful experience. So that's sort of my hope today, that as a group, we can do that for you, for those of you who are going through the journey. And myself, my grandmother was diagnosed, many, many years ago, but at the time they said it was senility. And now as a dementia consultant, I'm like, oh my God, my grandmother had Alzheimer's. I'm in high school, college, and my father is just broken up about his mother. And I wish I could have helped him. What I know now could have helped him. I can't help him, but what I can do is do the very best I can to support people on this journey. I wrote the book so that you never feel alone and that somebody is standing right by your side, walking you through the journey. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today.
I love about normalizing the range of emotions with the struggle with guilt. I think if we can accomplish that, we've really accomplished something for the majority of everyone attending and sharing this webinar with their friends. I think I went again. I think the internet might be a little unstable, so bear with me a little bit here. The storm is really coming in. I actually witnessed Tami work miracles with two gentlemen that were really struggling. One had dementia, one was trying to care for his partner with dementia. And I saw you do it. You spent 30 minutes. They were both sobbing, and you got them through to the other end, that giving them hope and giving them just solid advice. So thank you, Tami.
Thank you,
and
Susan.
I still think of that day. And Monica, you're on.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon. My name is Monica Moore. I work at the Mary S. Easton Center for Alzheimer's Research and Care at UCLA. So that is here in Los Angeles. And what I am so grateful to be able to do today is to be able to work with, talk to all of you caregivers about the world, about sort of like the world of grief and how it's not linear. It's ups and it's downs and it's hills and valleys, and there'll be days where you are fine, and then there are days that you are wrecked. So much of the work that I do, I work with our families and our caregivers of people who are coming to UCLA for medical care, and we manage 9 different support groups, and they're all virtual, and really working with the families and experiencing this and walking the journey with them and telling them how, very few of you, I think, signed up for this gig. Very few of you went to school to be caregivers, and you're all truly doing the best that you can every day. Some days you may be a straight A student. Other days you might just be passing. But it's still your journey, and that, you're also trying to find a way to link in your relationships with your loved ones as well. And all of this really confounds, the world of grief, whether it's grief while the person is living, while the grief after the person has passed. And so unlike Lisa and Tami, I don't have a grand quote for you, but I am grateful to be able to be here and to be able to be a part of this panel. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, the Q&A is already very active, and everyone's asking, where are you located and how do I get links to your support groups? So let me just share before we introduce Melissa that you will all receive links to access these wonderful ladies' support groups in the follow-up email. And I suggest you do so because I believe all 4 of you have virtual, some in person, but it is available virtual. So it doesn't matter where you are in the country, you can tune in. Go ahead, Melissa.
Hi, my name's Melissa Long, and I am a recreational therapist by trade. I'm a certified dementia practitioner, but I am the Director of Education and Support at Insight Memory Care Center. We are based in Northern Virginia. We're the only dementia-specific adult day center within a 500-mile radius, which makes me sad. I'm glad we don't have competition, but at the same time, there's so many people that are in need of us that I wish there was more. COVID opened some doors for us. We're having our 40-year anniversary this year. We used to just be everything in person, and COVID really opened a door, and now we're servicing over 29 different states because so much of our stuff is hybrid and virtual. And we actually just launched a self-paced platform on our website. So when she shares that information, there's a 10-module caregiver class that you can take that's free of charge because we are a nonprofit that you can utilize. So there's lots of things there, and we do over 20 support groups and all that. So I know you all are really excited to have resources, and there's definitely a lot there for that. But something important I wanted to share with you guys, I work really closely with a lot of neurologists, and I had a neurologist come to our boot camp we did last month. We had a couple people that were really upset and showing their grief through this journey. And she said, I want you all just to listen to me for a minute. I don't want any responses. I just want you to listen because they want to know what they could do to deal with this and how they shouldn't be angry. And she said, well, you know what? We all die at some point. And I want you to think about the fact that when someone has a diagnosis with dementia, you're given the gift of time. It may not seem fair because of some of the stuff you have to go through in this journey, but think about someone who loses their loved one in a car accident. They didn't have time to make some more memories, to share moments with. And so I want you to think of it as a gift. And the room was really quiet. I got goosebumps when she said it. And it just makes you look at it in kind of a different perspective. And it really did turn the mood in the room after those questions. So I just ask you all to, as hard as it is, sometimes look for those moments. I know I've had caregivers share to me, oh yeah, my husband really wants to help with dishes, and I find the bowl in the freezer and the spoon in the pantry and who knows, something else in the dryer, and I just have to chuckle. And so, let's find those little moments to, kind of soften all the hard moments that we have. My experience, my grandmother had vascular dementia. My mother now has vascular dementia at a very young age of 68. I've seen it in my family on 2 different levels.
I love that it gives you time. And I also like the story, the husband helping with the dishes, because if you can just dig down as deep as you can, if you can find any humor in certain things and just laugh out loud, it is such a release of tension and stress, and it's just a mood elevator. My father, we live close to him, and he would come up every day at 5 o'clock. I think my mom kicked him out. That's why every day at 5 o'clock, and I would start dinner, and my kids were still home then, and I was like, oh, here he comes again. He'd stop at the mailbox and he'd get the mail, and he'd come up and he'd want to have a beer. And so I'd say, okay, why don't you sit down and I'll cook and we can have a beer. And it got to the point where he forgot where the beer was. And then one time he went and poured a beer and he put a big dollop of yogurt in it. And I just thought, you just have to laugh. Yeah. As much as you can, although it's so difficult. So I have a question here. Someone is wondering if there is anyone else who is caring for parents or a parent who didn't have such a great relationship with them and now suddenly has them back in their lives more than ever. This person is grieving, but feels like the grieving is a little different. Who would like to start with that?
No, I'll take that one. Yeah, I'd be happy to. First of all, I want to say to the attendee that we all feel empathize for you being in this tough situation, realizing this is something that I think is often overlooked. We think, oh, I'm going to care for mom and it's going to be great, and this is but what was your relationship before? And this is going to change the course of your caregiving. It's going to change your ability to care, either just emotionally, or physically, or logistically, because I have people in my support groups who say they're like, my mom was never nice to me, but here I am having to care for her because I'm an only child, or there's no one else who will. I have other people in my support groups who mom wasn't nice to any of the kids. And this one child sort of like, I have the obligation to step up. I have someone in my support group who his mom was actually, was into heavy drugs. She was a prostitute for a time, and her son is taking care of her. And he says, that now he has found the beauty in his mom that he was never able to experience before because of her drug use, because of her lifestyle. And it's really difficult. Also wanting to say you should not have to be doing this alone. Get that support, find the different resources in your area to be able to help you through this, because what you're being faced with is not easy. And there are some people who say caregiving is the greatest honor of their life, because they're able to give back to the parent that gave them so much. That doesn't sound like that's your situation. And realizing that you are grieving multiple things. You're grieving the relationship that maybe you wish you had. You're grieving the opportunity for reconciliation. You're grieving just the slow, gradual deterioration of your parents. So find the support for yourself, but there are so many people in situations similar to yours.
I want to add to that. I think it's really important to give yourself grace because you have trauma from something, and also setting those boundaries. You don't feel like when someone says, well, you don't visit enough, don't take that to heart, because they don't know your story. And I try to tell caregivers that all the time in communities when they're like, well, the family member doesn't visit. And I said, you don't know their story. You don't know why that is. And so, try to let that roll off your shoulders and just give yourself some grace, because you're doing a job that you didn't see coming. And no one's prepared for this, no matter how much we read up, because everything can go great for 2 days and another shoe drops. I hear that all the time from families. So give yourself some grace and know that we're out there to give you support through this.
And I'll add to that as well, especially if it was an abusive relationship, right? So you're just as important as the person you're taking care of. So know what your limits are. Be honest with yourself. What are you willing to do? And what you're not willing to do, where do we find the resources so that you're not the only one having to do it? And at the same time, if this is something you feel comfortable doing and you want to do it, but basically we're giving you permission to be in control of what you can and cannot do. And it's okay what you can't do. The other thing to keep in mind too is what can happen is dementia behaviors can look like they're still being abusive intentionally. And it can be very confusing, like, they're pushing my buttons on purpose, or, they're still treating me poorly. So here again, know what your boundaries are, know what your limitations are, and you're uncertain as to what those are. Give yourself permission to feel the feelings. And what can your feelings, how can those benefit you? What are the red flags your feelings are trying to tell you? And honor those. And also do not compare your caregiving, what you're going to do or not going to do, to other people. It is your relationship. It's what you've been through. Value what you've been through, and do not compare yourself to other people, because that's another rabbit hole that, well, this person's doing this and this person's doing that. And yet we got to take care of you. And so this becomes especially complicated if the relationship pre-dementia, if they were abusive. So I'm still going to encourage those of you, bless your hearts, and give yourself permission, give yourself grace to, do what's best for you. And then we know the person living with dementia is going to have needs. And how do we get those needs met so it's not at the expense of your physical, mental, and emotional well-being?
Lisa, do you have something to add?
I think they covered everything.
I've heard this multiple times. And what do you guys think about just forgiving and moving on? Because, sometimes it's really hard. Like, I heard someone my age who's taking care of her mother say, now, I'm at her beck and call. She calls all the time. She wants this, she wants that, she wants that. Where was she when I wanted her to visit in college? So do you sometimes just have to forgive them? I mean, no one signed up for this. Certainly your mother that has dementia. Go ahead, Lisa.
There's just so many times it really, any unresolved issue in our lives, this is where it shows up.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And it is our choice, as if we can muster it, to find a way to forgive, to heal, to shift our relationship with them. We can't control them at all.
And grief gives us that opportunity to do that.
It does.
Grief, in my practice, I'll often say, grief could actually heal old wounds. We have to mourn the loss of either what you've been through, mourn the loss of what you're going through. That sometimes is what allows us to forgive. Sometimes that is what allows us to embrace what is and let go of what was. So there's things, if it's been an abusive relationship, there's things that you've already have lost. The parent that you wanted, the needs that didn't get met. And now maybe grief will give you that permission to process those feelings so that it does allow you to come over to the other side. But I think sometimes in order to accept and in order to forgive, we have to grieve what we've been through. We have to grieve and allow ourselves to feel those feelings. And how can those feelings educate us and help us? And the most painful things, unfortunately, can be the things that give us the most strength, that we learn the most from, but it can be awfully painful.
Yeah. Any thoughts on, Melissa, you mentioned that dementia gives you more time, that it's not a sudden loss, like an accident or something completely unexpected. And they talk about when you lose someone like that you go through a grieving process. Do you ladies think that the grieving process is similar, like the stages of grieving?
Yeah, so they have a term called ambiguous loss. that once the diagnosis happens, you start grieving this person that's changing, this loss you're going through with this relationship that you're used to. And so, yeah, I think that definitely does play a role in it, because you're having to accept that some of the comments being said, some of the skills that are being lost is not the person you knew. And you miss that person. You feel lonely at times because they're not there, even though they are, right? And so, yeah, I absolutely think you do go through those, and both for the person with the diagnosis and the caregiver.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this disease this journey is not for the faint of heart. I think we'll all agree with that. And it is grief, and any type of dementia. There is no linear line, right? As we're sharing. And so there's just a lot going on, and it takes a village.
Really does take a village. And I'm going to applaud a couple questions on here. We have some men on the webinar because they're asking questions about their wife. And I just want to thank them for actually joining this and looking for the support. I thank you so much for joining. The first question is, this gentleman is caring for his wife and he's the sole caregiver. They do not have any children, neighbors, or really friends. And he's just wondering if his grief is a little different being so isolated, or if you have any thoughts about that.
I'd like to, if I can chime in, I just had this one thought too about the word, like we use this word grief, right? To describe all sorts of sadness, loss, we can really define it. And then there's what we call like different types of grief. Like what Melissa said, there's the ambiguous grief, there's anticipatory grief, but ultimately we're all still just dealing with grief. Mm-hmm. Whether it is the loss of a job or the loss of a loved one, of a spouse, a partner, a child, what we're dealing with is our loss. And, I'm never going to say someone's grief is more intense or harder than another person's grief, because just because it's a spouse doesn't mean that relationship is a deeper, more meaningful relationship than someone with their parent, because all of our relationships are so personal. So I see I have the Q&A up, and I think, it's one of those things of, I don't want anyone comparing their grief to anyone else's, because it is your relationship with that person, whether it's a parent that you never cared for, or it's a parent who is your best friend. Is it a partner who you've been married to for 50 years, but you've just sort of been married to them because, well, what else were you going to do? Or is it the true absolute love of your life who you never spent a day apart? So the relationships are so different. And so it's the world of seeing how these change. It's not that a person is gone, it's the change that is occurring. And that is where we see grief. So in some ways, it's like, call it what you want, but it's still the way that you identify with the person and how you identify with your feelings on this journey. Because I think sometimes people get a little too caught up in terminology and relationships. But what it is, it's like, how are you feeling today? Because your feelings tomorrow are going to be different than today. Tomorrow could be a really good day. Tomorrow could be a terrible day. And so your grief levels are going to change. And again, as we've mentioned this a few times, it's like, just give yourself grace and kindness throughout this. And if you're able to enjoy the good moments with your loved one, because those are the ones that are going to carry you through the really hard days.
I'm going to piggyback off of Monica too. It's very personal, how we all grieve, how our feelings are very, very personal. And on behalf of the caregivers, I think sometimes what makes it even a little more difficult is when you have family and friends who say, oh, I just spoke to your wife, or I just spoke to your husband, and oh, they sound great. And wait a minute, I'm losing my loved one in front of me. And I think sometimes the caregivers, they need that support from family and friends too. And I think that can complicate, right, the grieving process to some degree. because nobody's acknowledging. We all acknowledge after death, but there's so many losses. And I think, again, it's such a personal, it's the personal relationship. It's who you are as that person. And so it's important that you get the support that you need and that you acknowledge the loss is a loss to you. And that's what matters more than anything else, is it's a significant loss to you. And how can we support you through this loss because it's significant to you?
A question that has come up actually a couple times on our Q&A, and thank you everyone for submitting questions. And I think I'll start with Lisa on this. There's 3 different people on here that are wondering if grieving, you know, I took care of I didn't take care of, but I was a caregiver for my father, and now I'm caregiving for my mother. But they are caregiving for their spouse, and they feel overwhelmed with grief over such a long period of time of this, you know, this slow decline of losing someone. Any thoughts on a difference potentially of grieving for, say, I'm taking care of somebody else, but is the spousal relationship of losing your wife or husband over many years?
It's your partner. It is the dynamics are a little bit different. But what Monica said was grief is grief, and it is. And it's all relative, right? It is a personal thing. But with you are losing your partner, so it's like when you do have your parents and you're married, you can have you have your parents, and then you can come home and talk to your husband or wife about it. You know, you have to figure out who your inner circle is when you're married to, you know, regardless, you can be, it's all the same. But I was losing my partner, and I lost my mother to dementia as well. Very different. You know, everybody presents it different. It progresses differently. Their personalities are different. Everything is so different. But it also addresses the isolation. I was extremely isolated. I have had to rebuild over time socialization in my life. It affected my health over time. And it was a slow, you know, my journey was very long. 15 years is long. But I think it's like, that's why I became an advocate, because I was fighting for my life and struggling and having to be the breadwinner, and my role changes. And that is what happens, is our roles change in all of these scenarios. We have to choose, we have to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But the isolation is really dangerous. Mm-hmm. And it catches up to you. And when someone is in the middle of someone, you know, in the early stages, approaching moderate stage especially, and they may be exhibiting certain, you know, expressions, it can be very, very challenging to kind of get a handle on it. That's why we need so much support, because there's so many skills to learn along the way. And it's, you're just, you know, I can't emphasize enough where we have to build a circle of support, have somebody to talk to almost on a daily basis, or somebody to tap in for our well-being, because we can get into a caregiver spin. And when you're in this disease as a family caregiver, you really don't, you know where you are kind of, but you don't know where you are. You hear about what to expect, but you don't know what it's going to look like. There will be changes. You can be walking along and your loved one can say something and it just hits you like a gut punch. It can just really sideswipe you. because it's another validation that you're losing them more. So kind of shared a lot in there. Anybody want to chime in?
I have a question for Lisa. Oh, sorry, Monica.
No, go ahead, Tami.
As the spouse, having gone through it, we all know how much it's a struggle to ask for help and get support. Having gone through it, and now being on the other end, what is something you, as the caregiver spouse, you would have done differently now after you've been through it that you think would have helped you through this journey more? Because you talk, which is true, the isolation, the loneliness.
Yeah.
Now, having been through it, if you had words of wisdom from Lisa as a caregiver spouse, what would you say would be one thing you would have done differently now that you've been through it?
I would have created, well, we moved a bunch of times too.
Awesome.
I kept like, you know, having to go through that adjustment. What I always say is everything I know now is I learned it in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And I do realize that what I was looking for along the way were little openings to move forward. And keep looking for those openings. If you have, just keep looking for the light. Keep, you know, if you feel like you're getting depressed, you know, it's really hard to, you know, we're all our worst enemies when it comes to reaching out for help. And we do it automatically. So if we can surround ourselves with people that can call us on it, because I think we're all pretty smart rats when it comes to figuring out how to like not ask for help. And I think we really do. This is the one disease that takes a village. And reach out to as much support as you can get, because it's connecting. As we all know who leads support groups, there's this magic, this connection, this bond that happens because you feel so alone. And you need to hear what other people are going through. And it's really neat when they can give each other support. And it helps. It helps. Because I did participate in a support group, but it was after, by the time Gary was diagnosed, it was 7 years later. So we'd gone through, you know, a lot.
I think that's one of the challenges, is not the caregiver spouse not even sure they know they have these needs, and they so badly want, you know, they've lost that partner, the person to share things with, go and do things with. And it's like, in my practice, I try to help them identify what needs are missing and how can we get those needs met, because it may not be met now with your spouse. And there's the double whammy, right? The loss of what I'm not getting from my spouse, but now how do I open that door and give myself permission to get those needs met in a different way? And it's such a conflict, and it can be so hard and difficult. So I just kind of wanted to kind of bring to the surface too, you've got needs, but how do I get those needs met, because I'm mourning the loss of what I had.
Well,
and yet
you lose sight of land.
Yeah,
you do. You lose sight of land. You lose sight of your own needs. You're thinking, and I say you're thinking for two brains.
Yeah,
you really are.
And it is overwhelming.
It's incredibly overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know, someone just said with their spouse, the hardest thing was losing their intimacy.
That's right.
Yes.
So that adds a whole different component. Go ahead, Monica or Melissa.
I was going to say one thing we had, I'm seeing this theme in the chat where people are saying like, I'm alone. It's just me and my parents, or I have siblings who don't help, or then this is so common. This comes up so often, right? Look at everyone nodding our heads. Like this happens so often. I had someone in my support group recently, new to one of the groups, and she's in this situation where she's like, it's her and her husband, and he has family, but they don't come see him. And so you could tell just when she talks that like it was just really getting to her. And she was just with this withdrawal and this sadness that she was experiencing. So the group sort of challenged her to reach out to one person. We're like, okay, so we have the groups meet every 2 weeks. Like in these 2 weeks, reach out to one person, and just try to rekindle an old friendship. Try to make that difference, or even as simply as write down a list and think of the people who you could ask for small things from. We're not asking for a best friend here. We're asking for somebody who maybe they're going to the store as well, or you know that your neighbor goes to the same pharmacy as you. These types of things where you start to realize ultimately how much more of a network and a village you actually might have. You may not have people who call you all the time, but you have a village. Like if you think about it, everyone here would do something for anyone else who's here. Like if Lisa asked me, hey, Monica, could you pick something up for me? Like, of course, Lisa, what do you need? Happy to help you. But am I going to ask Lisa? It's very different. We all want to help, but we don't want the help. Yes. But in this world of caregiving, you need to get to the point where you are slightly comfortable with asking for help, even if it's just for one small thing, even if it's, just starting to expand that world, because you might feel isolated and alone, but you're not, because there are people who will be there. But sometimes you just have to ask, because no one knows what's going on in your mind and no one knows what's going on in your house unless you share it. So that's such a big step, and it's such a challenge for so many people, but it will be crucial to you surviving dementia and you surviving this journey.
Yeah, and I had a great story a family member shared with me. We do a workshop with the book that Insight has. And so we go through each chapter. It's like a book club for 5 weeks. And her husband has a very rare form of dementia that's only treated in 3 hospitals in this country. And he doesn't want anyone to know. And she's respecting that. But she finally looked at him and said, then I'm going to talk to strangers because I need to talk to somebody. And so we have to have care partner meetups where caregivers just get together and talk about their resources and all of that. And so she's going to start going to that and talk to strangers so that she can get out her feelings and the stress that she's going through. And I think that ties right in with what Monica said of finding one person to connect with. And doing this workshop from home allowed her to get the courage to take that next step so that she's not standing alone through this journey.
I love writing it down. Put it on your refrigerator. I just love that, because that gives you more strength, just looking at the list you did. And maybe I should call Anne today or Roger. And I love that. This question really pulls at my heartstrings. And that is, they're struggling with their father. And now they just feel such guilt about it's time to pass away. And, how do you deal with it says, my brother and I just want this to end. Any thoughts on that? I mean, they say, dementia is the long goodbye, but it's pretty brutal. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I say some of the greatest the greatest gift you can give your loved one who, is just saying that, like, giving them permission, acknowledging to yourself that you've done the best that you can, and giving them permission. And it's hard. Again, that's a word that's going to come up a lot throughout this talk. But it's just the world of don't beat yourself up for wanting it to end. When that time does come, I have so many caregivers who say, I'm glad. Like, is it bad that I'm saying that I'm glad they died? And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. Like, you've been through a lot and you do want it to, come to an end. And you just sort of looks like, and this is a matter of just seeing if you and your brother can help and hold each other throughout this challenging time, and be, know that the end will come. And it's hard. And like you said, it's not for the weak.
I think it's an extension of love. We love our loved ones so much that their quality of life, that I think giving them permission and giving yourself permission, that to me, that's true love. That's unconditional. I want the best for you. I continue to want the best for you. And if leaving and passing away and wanting this to end, I find that very loving. I don't think the intention is we want them to die. What you're saying is, you've lived a life. It's time to move on. I love you, and I want to continue to love you as you pass away. And so I like to try to reframe it, but the guilt is huge. The guilt is huge, but I see it as an extension of love. And to me, it's just verbalizing how much you love them, that we want this journey to be over, both for them and as well as what's happened to you throughout the process too. So I like to try to help people reframe it as a way of, and it's just another extension of love and compassion and the care you have for that person.
Yeah.
If it was any of us, we'd want to say bye-bye too, right? So, and I would hope my loved ones would honor that and say, you know what, it's okay. We want you to pass now, because my quality of life now is not what it was. And I would perceive it as again, an extension of love and care and compassion.
And also, going back to this disease brings it, normalizing every emotion we have, every emotion we feel, whether it's anger, guilt, just wanting them to pass, is part of it. And it's okay. It's really important to feel the whole, and that is the opportunity when we are no longer caregivers. And of course, I think I'll probably always be once a caregiver, always a caregiver, right? But when it's over, you realize what you've gotten is a depth of, and a wide band of emotion that most people will never have. It's quite a roller coaster ride, and it makes us better. It can make us better human beings. I'm a better person because of my journey, and it was hard. Yeah.
So Susan, I'm seeing a couple repeated questions in the Q&A as well. One I'm seeing is a lot of people are getting to that stage where there's a lot of incontinence and needing more care, and when is the right time to move and how to deal with that because it's stressing people out. You have to take care of yourself. And that's always a hard question. We get that question a lot. When's the right time to move? The biggest one is safety, obviously. If safety can't be maintained in the home, then it's time to take another transition. If they're already in a community and you're trying to decide from assisted living to memory care, I always say if they can't take themselves to things and they're isolating, it's time to move them. And the reason I say that is we look at COVID, and I literally saw someone in a continuing care community in an apartment for independent living because of the isolation declined all the way to memory care in 9 months because she was isolated because they weren't going out to activities. And so you'll see a rapid decline without having that engagement and that structure. And so that's when I encourage that move. And there's tricks of the trades with incontinence. There's not just Depends. You can get incontinence underwear that feel like normal underwear. So if you're having issues with that, that might be worth a try. The other thing, if that's increasing more, have they been checked for urinary tract infection? When you're seeing those changes, it could be a health issue to check with the doctor. And then the other recurring theme I'm seeing is questions about the end of life and hospice. And there was one question specifically asked about how do you give your loved one permission? And how do you do it? I've done this with patients that I've worked with. If the family's not willing to do it and the person's stretching on, I just say it's okay to go. I remember calling my grandmother because she was down in Florida on the phone, and I said, Grandma, it's okay to go. And so just tell them, because sometimes they're wanting permission to leave. And then the other question about when's the right time to transition to hospice. Well, with the diagnosis of dementia, you can be on palliative care once you get that diagnosis. And hospice is a gift. Jimmy Carter is a great example of hospice. And I know Lisa can probably chime in more about that, but they add to your wife or husband's quality of life. And so it's not, oh, they go on hospice, they're going to die tomorrow. Jimmy Carter's been on for what, 14, 15 months now. And it's giving him quality of life so that he can enjoy the end and not be in pain and have time with his family. But I'll let Lisa, if she has anything to add with that with hospice care.
Yeah, thank goodness that is the case where Medicare will cover hospice when there's Alzheimer's and their care needs are high. And it's such a gift because now you want a good hospice company because there are a lot of hospice companies out there and they're not all created equal. But they bring in a social worker. It was the most support. My husband was on hospice. That in itself, like moving your loved one is a hard decision. Making that decision to go on hospice is it's a tough decision because it's the next level. But it was so amazing between the music therapy and the social worker and someone I could talk to. And it allowed I made it known. I'm part of the team and I want to know everything going on. And don't be afraid of the word. It is there to support you. People go on and off hospice. So it isn't the end. It's a blessing.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Melissa, because I think hospice is as helpful for the caregiver.
Yes.
I felt when my dad was on hospice, it was a support mechanism for me. I had multiple people I could talk to. I didn't feel so isolated, and isolation is a rampant theme in our questions as well. And I thought hospice was wonderful. But one thing I wanted to add is, how do you give someone permission to go? Is when my dad was in his last stages and I wanted him to have permission to go, I would tell him every time how much I loved him and thanked him for everything he gave me, and told him, I will take care of mom. I will take care of your wife, because I knew that he had always taken care of her. And I just wanted him to feel like I had that covered. And I think it's important because it was helpful for me to be able to share that with him, even though I don't know how much was recognized. It was still therapeutic for myself. And if you ladies could just spend a minute, you mentioned palliative care, but I think that's a really important component here that I don't want to gloss over, because there's so much confusion between palliative care and hospice. Can anyone speak to that for our audience?
I'm not an expert in that area. And I don't know.
Palliative care can really come in once, as Melissa said, once the diagnosis comes, and can offer the same type of support. And palliative care is more of a long-term caregiving resource. And I recommend, it's really becoming better known in the country. And every palliative doctor I know are so impressive.
Does it apply to Alzheimer's though?
Oh,
I'm
yes.
sure.
Yes.
I don't.
Yeah. So palliative care, in general, for the definition, is anyone with a long-term diagnosis that can lead to pain or mobility. You can sign up for it the minute you have that diagnosis, and they can monitor medications and make sure things are pain-free and that you're having the best quality of life. Does anyone have any extras to add to that?
And palliative care could, it's how can I say this? Like even with physical therapy, occupational therapy, it's just a big umbrella of services that can be provided to you pre end of life, right? And sustain and maintain as much, again, quality of life as possible. So it is lovely. It's something people are not aware of, but it's becoming more and more and more out there as a resource to look into. And of course, at varying degrees, why would we bring palliative care in? We're still in the process of, they're still on Aricept, they're still taking, medication. Palliative care is not end of life care. I think that's the difference, right? Palliative care is still It's quality of life care while we're still in the process of living our best life. Hospice care is again quality of life care as end of life comes closer.
And I hope that for our audience, that can help a lot of you. Certainly with the isolation questions, because it's you have someone to talk to about your loved one that you're caring for, and I think it's very therapeutic. We have time for 2 questions. I did want to get to Carol's question about the value of journaling.
Oh,
I knew you guys would love that. Monica?
Yeah, I think it's so wonderful. And even Carol, you mentioned like even as an extrovert, you think as an extrovert, like, oh, I'm just going to talk to people all the time. I'm going to go to support groups, I'm going to do these things. But really the opportunity to journal is the chance of focusing in just about your thoughts. One thing that I like to subscribe to regarding journaling is I never really look at what I wrote. I don't edit it. It's literally just writing and writing and writing and writing, and wherever the mind is going, it's this wonderful opportunity to get it out. And where you're able to, in some ways, release the worries, release the thoughts and the stress. Like you mentioned that you do it, before you go to bed. I know some people do it at the beginning of the day, sort of setting intentions for their day. And realizing too that it is a tool. It is something that can work for you. That there's all sorts of different type of journaling, right? You can journal in an actual journal. There's now like an app on your iPhone that came along with the latest install that is the journal app on your iPhone. And so you're able to see these things, but it's an opportunity to get some of these thoughts out, because I think caregivers hold a lot in. And then if you hold it in, it becomes stressful and it becomes toxic to your body. So having this opportunity to release it and to find a way to place your grief, your anger, your sadness, your frustrations, and your joy, I think is really just beautiful. And then it can serve as a memento of what you accomplished and what you got through and how strong of a person you are.
I've had caregivers do a couple different things. Some have journaled and then want to turn it into a book. And they've asked me to look at it to see if that would be a great idea. I've also had others who've done anonymous blog series who will write their story and share with others so that others can get those pieces. And so those are 2 different ways you can utilize the journaling if you want to look back at it. But I think, being able to give back to other caregivers is so important too, because you're not the first and you won't be the last, and everyone can use some support.
Yeah. I journal fairly regularly. I've got lots of volumes. Some of the stuff I've written doesn't even make sense. It is, I like to journal in the morning. When I'm really, really have anxiety or I'm, something's going on, I don't tend to really sit down and do it and that's probably the time I should be. But it is a wonderful place, whatever can ground you and center you, and breathing. Yoga was my thing for a long time, but journaling's wonderful. Wonderful. It's magical.
I agree with all of them. The journaling is just a wonderful outlet. And that could take many forms: painting, drawing, and if you don't have the time to write, you just talk into something and get it out. Whatever is going to allow you to express the feelings. It can come in many, many, many different forms. And I'm a huge fan of journaling, but I also know I hear from caregivers too, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy. So let's come up with some other ways we might be able to get those emotions and feelings out, right? But yeah, I'm a huge fan of journaling too. Yeah.
We received a question. It says, I think it would be easier if all I felt was sadness, not the anger and frustration. And maybe journaling can help with that. I mean, you guys can answer the question, but how do you release this anger and frustration and turn it into something that's not so toxic?
Exercise, exercise, exercise.
Go for a walk with your notepad and paper and get it all done at the same time. Journal, walk, exercise.
You hear a lot of people say they can't meditate because their brain keeps going back to what's going on. And if you're like me, who's type A, journaling, I can sit there and go back and go, oh, that doesn't look right. And I'll start crossing things out instead of just letting it flow. So sometimes for some people, exercise is the way to go, to just get it out and get those endorphins going.
I just say, what's the anger telling you, and how do we comfort? What do you need to do to nurture the anger? What do we need to do to comfort the anger? What's causing the anger? What's the anger trying to tell you? And what do you need to do to help work through the anger? Because we can't deny it. You feel it. It's there for a reason. How do we honor it? How do we embrace it? And what can it teach us? And then how can it help you?
Yeah. Anger is a huge emotion on this journey. I'm a big believer in, there's a lot of energy with this dementia, with this disease, and there's a lot of energy going on in our lives, and it's energy in and energy out, and we have to figure out a way, whatever that is. For me, it was yoga, working out. Get it out somehow. And whatever that takes, find your own groove, find your own cadence, because this is so personal. You can't do it like somebody else does. There is no other person but the person you're in. But, there's a lot of relatable things to this disease that you can relate to others going through it. But it is personal.
Well, I have good news for our audience, and that is that these wonderful ladies will be back with you on September 4th, if not before. But I encourage everyone to reach out for the support groups. They all offer virtual support groups, and that's a great first step. The question still coming in is people feel really isolated. Like, I used to have friends and now I reach out, and because there's so many people that are afraid, like you, they're afraid of the disease, which is really sad, but it is a reality. And so I thank the audience, and please do share this with friends and family. And does anyone have anything they want to say before we Zoom off?
I just know we didn't get to all the questions, and they're going to give you our information. So please, I'm sure all of us are willing to answer any of those questions. If you feel like your question didn't get answered, reach out to us, because we'd be more than happy to answer those questions so that you're not left hanging.
Yes.
Well,
and for everybody who's struggling with, just know you do matter, and we do care for you and what you're going through. And we care for the loved one and what they're going through as well. So I just want to close with, you're just as important as the person that you're taking care of.
Everybody now is saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh no, I think I missed this. Was it recorded? Yes, Alexis, it is recorded, and you will be sent an email. And people even called you guys rock stars. So thank you to the audience, but thank you to Kensington Caregiver Expert Rock Stars. You now have a new name. And I echo what Melissa said. We didn't even get to some of the questions at registration because we had 32 questions come in on the live Q&A. So please reach out. The support is here. And we're going to wish you all a great evening if you're on the East Coast with Melissa, or a dry evening if you're on the West Coast with the rest of us. But take care and be safe. And thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.